few participants on anyway, so if we're happy, we'll just process with the meeting then. Is that okay? Well, good evening, folks. Welcome to the Coatbridge Community Board meeting, 24th of August. Again, can I just remind you that it's been live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, so if we can make our best behaviour, that would be much appreciated. And we'll probably move on to the first item, and we're looking at any apologies.
Chair, I have a couple of apologies. One from Annette Warren. I had a tentative from Gabriella Mitas. I don't see her on the meeting, so I'm assuming she's an apology as well.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, Chair, Councillor Bill Shields.
That's great. Okay, can we look at you should have received the previous minutes for the meeting. If we could look at any matters arising, and then we can maybe look at getting them passed and probably seconded. I know Karen Williamson's come in that there's been just a slight error. Edmund Woods represents Kirkshaw's tenants and residents, and not Kirkwood.
Yeah, that's great. And I put my name down for it as well, Willie. That'd be great. Thank you.
Right, that's great. Okay, I take it we've all had a look at the minutes.
Yeah, I've noticed another error as well. It says that Jodie Gemmell and Alan, sort of forget his surname, had attended. I attended that meeting alone, so neither of those individuals were at the meeting.
Okay. We're happy with amendments. Can we get the minutes?
So it's Alan Davis, just to be clear.
Great. If maybe we can get minutes formally passed then, please, David, pass the minutes.
Chair Marion Tobin's got her hand up, and Janie O'Neill.
Okay, that's lovely. That's great. So we can now move on with the rest of the next minutes. So that takes us to item 4, the Chair of Community Board arrangements. Again, I'm just going to reiterate again that there is an interest that we would like to see the chair on a rotational basis, and if anybody is an expression of interest would like to chair it, if they could contact the Community Matters at northland.gov.uk and also copy in Christine Boyle. So as I say again, if anybody would be interested in taking over a wee shot of chair, you're more than welcome. Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 5, I've got Head of Services, Community Champion Janie O'Neill, Head of Education. I think, Janie, she's going to provide us with an update. And
that's correct.
That's great. And as I say, Janie, if people's got any maybe comments or questions that we can fire at me after that, okay?
No bother at all. So, yeah, just got no bother. Just got an update for you here in terms of the Community Champions and the progress that's been made since our last meeting. So we've got 9 community champions, of which I'm one, now assigned to the community boards, and obviously the one that I'm assigned to and I'm delighted to be on, as I said last time we met, is the Coatbridge Community Board. So the plan is that we will remain in place for 3 years, but there'll be a review after 30 months. And the reason for the length of that appointment is obviously to build knowledge about the area and also to build trust with the local community and of course the board members. So that was the reason for the period of time. So the aims and objectives in terms of community champions were circulated on the 27th of July and returns have been requested by the 16th of August. And so far we've had 12 responses received, for the most part positive, a couple of individual questions and so on that we can take on board. And it's one of my other Head of Service colleagues that's overseen the community champions work overall, and he'll be feeding back on that. So we do recognise that this is a role which is in its infancy. It's obviously new for all of us, so it will evolve. We will feel our way with it, and it will adapt and it will change over coming months, I'm sure, as we take on board feedback from yourselves and grow into the role as well. And the key thing is that we deliver on its purpose, which is to improve the overall communication and outcomes for local communities. And that's what my role is, being here. So a further report summarising the community champion role and how it links in with the overall Delivering for Communities programme for the Council is to be delivered to the Council's corporate management team on the 28th September 2021, which is obviously not that long away. Going forward, the intention is for community champions to meet together between each cycle of board meetings, and the intention of this is to highlight any common issues which we're picking up through the board meetings so that we can all feed back to one another, which again I think makes sense. Agree the allocation of very specific asks around service areas, share best practice, and also to introduce an element of consistency across the board, whilst recognising obviously that each area is unique as well. So that's really my update for just now, Chair. Hope that's okay. Thanks very much.
That's great, Jane. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions, anything to ask of Jane?
Councillor McVeigh, Chair.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, carry on, Councillor.
Right, yeah. Jenny was up at Townhead Nursery last week at Dockett Street, Townhead. He spent £400,000 renovating the place. It looks fantastic, but there's no new sign up outside. Could you get a new sign up?
Sure, Councillor McVeigh, I'll take that one on board. I'll feed that one back to my colleague. No problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions, comments? Okay, Jenny, thank you very much for that. Going on to item 6, it's Act Now. Maddie Halliday from Van Elle, she's going to provide a presentation on the action on climate together. And I think Christine's going to share the presentation with us.
I hope so.
Good luck.
Yes, because last night it didn't work at all, but now I think Christine's going to be able to upload it. Oh, yes, that's great. Do you want to do slideshow? That's lovely. So thank you. So everybody, really nice to be here. Obviously, it's not as good remotely as in person. I'm just going to set up also my, so I can view notes on. So, right, that's fine. Sorry, I've got a laptop here so I can see my notes. So what I'm going to be doing today is presenting on Act Now, North Lanarkshire, which stands for Action on Climate Together. The Act Now name was sort of identified or branded by the council in 2019 because they were promoting awareness around the COP26 event in November in Glasgow, but the work was paused because of COVID last year. So there's a couple more Act 21 events that the council's running, but Act Now is our collective brand under the North Lanarkshire Partnership. So if I could just go to the next slide, please, Christine, my assistant, thank you. So in this presentation, I'm just going to say a few words about the climate emergency and also climate action. Many of you may be very familiar with the information I'm sharing there, but I think it's important just to have everybody on the same page in terms of our understanding about what is happening in relation to climate change and the climate emergency and some of the climate action that people are organisations and people are taking. And then I'm just going to briefly introduce you to Act Now, but the main focus when I do that will be on what we can do at local level in communities, because lots is being done at international, national level within North Lanarkshire, and we want to look at what we can do supported by community boards. So we'll have also time for questions, and if you want to interrupt me at any point and ask for clarification or ask me a question, please just do that. That would be absolutely fine. So could I have the next slide, please? One moment. Okay, so we're going to just focus in the first part of the presentation, as I said, on climate emergency and climate action. And the next slide, please. So this diagram looks quite complicated, but I'm going to explain it because it's really important so we know where we are. I think the first point to just clarify is that when we're talking about climate change, which is a term that's been used for a long time and you're probably all aware of, it's not about short-term fluctuations in the weather. It's actually about long-term shift in average weather patterns across the world. And some people might say, well, we've had climate change in the past. But what we're talking about here in relation to the climate emergency is a very significant shift in climate patterns that have their roots back in actually the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, where we have released increasingly large amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases such as methane into our atmosphere through things like our manufacturing, our house building, our road building and travel and so on. And this is causing global temperatures to rise, as you can see in this diagram here, and it's resulting in long-term changes to the Earth's climate, which is really challenging for us. And again, some of you might be aware that there's been some debate periodically that climate science isn't accurate, but this is not true. Globally, climate science has agreed for a long time that the climate change is caused by human activities, and the United Nations most recent report on this confirms unequivocally that it's human activities that are causing the climate global warming and the climate emergency, and it's affecting every area of the planet, our land, our air and our sea, and I think you can see that from the news. So this diagram is a climate action tracker, and it actually shows where we are. So if you actually see the green in the thermometer, you can see that at the moment we're at 1.2% warming in 2020. Now, that's already the highest level of global warming in the Earth's history. Now, we had you probably heard as well in the news about the Paris Agreement, which was agreed in 2015 by international governments to try and keep global warming at 1.5, which is the second line that you can see. Now, that already is just to reduce the most severe impacts. That doesn't mean there won't be climate change. It doesn't mean we don't have serious challenge. It just means that it would be at a level that we could adapt to and mitigate against. So that is the ambition. Now, unfortunately, that ambition has not been met yet, and we have a real challenge because if we look at current pledges, targets, policies and projection from across the world, we're heading for over 2 and potentially 3% increase. What I need to say is that that is really not a livable increase. And if we go above 3.8% increase in temperature, which takes you into the amber and black area, then really humans and probably most life on the planet can't survive. So we're not talking here about something that's nice to have, it's actually essential. So I'm sorry to be so gloomy, but the truth is that's where we are. And the reason it's called a climate emergency is because now the science says we have about 10 years only left to get our house in order and reduce carbon emissions to stay within the 1.5. And this is why it's a climate emergency. Could I have the next slide, please? So many of you will have heard also about the greenhouse effect that causes global warming, and this diagram looks complicated, but you'll have the slides shared with you with the minutes of the meeting. It's not really complicated, obviously. The sun warms up our planet, and half of that is reflected or absorbed by clouds in the atmosphere, and the other reaches the Earth. But when we produce too much carbon dioxide, unfortunately, it creates, and other greenhouse gases like methane, it creates a blanket over the Earth which traps the heat and warms like a greenhouse and warms up the planet. So that's what is going on at the moment. And so we have to reduce carbon emissions so that this blanket dissipates eventually. Could I have the next slide, please? So you will all also know about it's in the news at the moment. So these are just images just from now. In recent years, the Earth's temperature has been warmer than ever before. We have the polar ice caps melting, which will lead to sea level rises that could potentially, within decades or certainly 100 years or so, flood most of our coastal habitation. You'll have read and seen about the major floods in Central Europe. There's an image there of a motorway flooded in Germany. You'll have read about the fires that were rampant across across Europe, but particularly in Greece. And we have an image here of people being evacuated from an island, Evia, in Greece. But also we have raging forest fires in Siberia, which are actually reaching as far as the North Pole. This is unprecedented, and it's happening regularly in the summer months. And we could share images and stories across the world. And of course, Scotland and the UK are not exempt from this because we're in a more temperate climate. Some of these extreme weather events haven't happened to the same extent as elsewhere, but we do have fires, we are having flooding, and it's likely to get worse in Scotland and the UK as well. Could I have the next slide, please? So this seems very dispiriting, I know, but it is possible to change our course. And what's really important is to recognise that governments across the world are beginning to act. They're acting too late, too slowly. They haven't invested enough because we've known about this for at least 40 years, and there's been multiple international agreements that we failed to deliver on. But the COP26 in Glasgow is really the last point at which we can get governments to legislate and invest in and support the action that we need through major investment, greater investment than hitherto in renewable energy, green transport, reforestation, and more. Now, that's happening at global and national level, but what can we do? And that's the focus of this presentation. And I just wanted to give you that background. So these images actually give us hope. So we've got young people who are taking action, are expressing their voices. This is an image of young people on a climate strike, which is a global movement in George Square recently. We in North Lanarkshire have a network of young people who are now climate ambassadors, and that can grow. And our young people are becoming more and more passionate about this issue because, of course, it's their future that is being potentially taken away from them. So we need to do more. And it isn't just young people. There's a lot of older people as well. When I say older, I mean over 25, who are also joining in with young people and making their voices heard. There's other really practical things, some of which have been developing over decades, in fact, but need to grow. So there's opportunities, for example, for communities to run local renewable energy schemes. And in North Lanarkshire, we have actually about 10 renewable community energy schemes, although about half of those are actually run by the council, a couple are local farms, and one is a business, but we don't have any community-led community energy schemes. An opportunity, I think, in North Lanarkshire. Something that we do quite a lot of in North Lanarkshire is supporting community-led garden, woodlands and so on. And these are very, very important because they provide natural stores for carbon, but also help with green space and people being more active and promoting mental well-being. So these are just examples of people and community-led climate action. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I want to say that all of the science around climate change says about 50% of the change that we need to make to reduce carbon emissions has to come from changes in individual behaviour and community behaviour. So we're really got a major role to play. We can't just say it's all up to the governments to invest in change. We've also got to support bottom-up change within our own individual behaviour, our families and our communities. Could I have the next slide, please? So what I want to do is move on to Act Now and talk about what it is. I'm not going to talk about it in a lot of detail because you can read more at your leisure, but I'm going to give an overview of Act Now, and then I'm going to return to the point that I was just talking about, which is community-led action. Could I have the next slide, please? So Act Now was developed consultatively. In fact, we brought the draft Act Now plan to community boards last October, November. I was a bit disappointed, I have to be honest, I didn't get a lot of responses. We have mentioned the Act Now plan in the local outcome improvement plans, but I believe this is absolutely critical to the future and well-being of everybody in North Lanarkshire and, of course, across the world. So I'm hoping that community boards will embrace and engage with this important agenda. And you'll see that the aims actually are very broad, because by addressing the climate change in a way that supports environmentally, socially and economically sustainable progress. So when we're looking at tackling poverty and looking at reducing carbon emissions, we can look at those two things together when we look at job creation. We really do need to look at improving well-being as we tackle climate emergency through, for example, greening of our communities and planting trees and so on. So we're talking about, the term net zero is about reducing carbon emissions so that carbon is still produced, but for any given organisation or area is still emitted, but we're trying to aim for net zero. Now, many of you will know that the council declared a climate emergency, and its ambition for the council's operation, but also for the whole of North Lanarkshire, is that we reach net zero by 2030, whereas the Scottish Government's ambition is that we reach net zero through by 2045. And what we know is that if we get this right, we can have significant benefits for quality of life, well-being and equality now and into the future. So I'm not going to say too much more. The action plan sets out objectives and principles, but it also sets out some of the key actions that we need to be taking at different levels. Just a reminder of the partners for North Lanarkshire Partnership along the bottom, the partner organisations. But of course, North Lanarkshire Partnership, as you know, as being members of community boards, are absolutely critical. Our residents through our community boards and other fora are vital to the partnership. Just to say also that Vanal was appointed by the Strategic Leadership Board last autumn to be the lead agency to support Act Now on behalf of the partnership, but we're working collaboratively with everybody. And this presentation today and at the other community boards is launching Act Now through community boards, and we've got other events happening as well. Could I have the next slide, please, Christine? So we've talked about very high level ambitions for North Lanarkshire around achieving net zero as our contribution to tackling the climate emergency. And this may seem a really, really big agenda, but actually a lot's already happening. So the public sector, the council, the NHS, police, fire, they've already had legal duties to reduce carbon emissions for over a decade. And with recently updated legislation, they now have to accelerate their plans, as I mentioned earlier, to reduce to net zero by 2045, but the council's already committed to reducing it sooner. So we've already got a really strong foundation across North Lanarkshire in the public sector, but they can't deliver it alone. We also need residents and the community and voluntary sector to get involved, and I want to talk about that in my last slide or two a bit more fully. We also need the business sector in North Lanarkshire to engage in this and reduce their carbon emissions and aim for net zero. Now, the council colleagues in the enterprise team are holding a Act 21 event, and Act Now will be launched at that's in September, and there will be ongoing support to the business sector in North Lanarkshire to help them reduce carbon and aim for net zero. There's a bit of support, or quite a lot of support nationally, for the business sector as well. And the Act Now initiative is supported by an Act Now coordinating group with representation from all of the partner organisations, from the youth ambassadors that I mentioned earlier, and also from the community and voluntary sector biodiversity and climate emergency network. And we really do want to have a very strong link into community boards, and we can talk about that in a minute. Could I have the next slide, please? So this is now really the heart of the presentation. The rest really was context and introduction. So if we're focusing on what residents and community and voluntary sector can do, and obviously they're very closely linked because most of our organisations in the community and voluntary sector are small organisations rooted in community, providing support and services to residents, but also much of their paid workforce and their volunteers are local people as well. So this is really tied in very strongly together. And what we really want to do is work with you to build capacity. For example, more local Act Now champions. We've got the youth ambassadors. Let's get more people. Looking at Act Now local groups that can discuss and agree the kind of community actions you want to support. And let's also strengthen our eco schools network in North Lanarkshire. We've already got most of our primary schools are badged as eco schools. Not all of them are fully accredited. We haven't got as many secondary schools that are eco schools. There's a formal national scheme that's been running for, goodness, I think 20 years, run by Keep Scotland Beautiful. And this is, I think, why so many of our young people are very aware and engaged in this issue. if we build that capacity, I think we can start to really strengthen and deepen climate emergency, climate change awareness at local level by residents and people within the voluntary sector. And that will support and build climate action in the community. And we also want, Vanal is very committed to working with community and voluntary organisations, much like the council's going to support businesses to also achieve net zero as organisations. And what that means is that they can do audits of their carbon emissions, reducing their carbon emissions from travel, looking at how they can change the products that they buy and so on. To give you an example, remote working can lead to an overall reduction in carbon emissions if you're working more from, staff are working more from home. You look at car sharing, remote meetings, there's a whole range of ways that organisations can do this. Can I move on to the next slide, please? So these are some of the things that I think and other communities across the UK, across Scotland, the UK, the world are doing, and some of it's already happening in North Lanarkshire. So I think the most important thing is to have community voice, to raise awareness and advocate for action by others. So advocate for action by local residents, but also as community boards, for example, checking in that you feel the council and other NLP partners are making the progress that they have committed to. There's opportunities, as I touched on earlier, for renewable energy schemes that could be community owned and led, that could actually supply on a small scale renewable energy onto the grid, onto the national grid, and actually earn income. We could increase the number of community woodlands and green spaces that communities run and plant. We can work with local people to support more green travel. Now, I know this isn't always easy. Public transport connectivity in North Lanarkshire, particularly north to south, isn't as good as we need it. Many people couldn't afford an electric car, but for example, in Shotts, in Getting Better Together, they recently raised money to buy electric minibuses for the community transport scheme. There's lots of promotion of cycling and walking, so communities can do a lot more there as well. And also there's opportunities around community sharing and upcycling schemes. For example, you can have banks of things that people can donate and can be lent out. And instead of disposing of items that could be repaired and reused, then we could actually support that more across North Lanarkshire. Across Scotland, there's amazing examples of this, and we've got some of them in North Lanarkshire, but let's do more. And if we look at diet, we have a lot of challenges in North Lanarkshire around people who struggle around food because of low income. But we also already have cooking classes. Perhaps we can adapt those to help people learn how to cook more plant-based food and less meat, because one of the biggest causes of carbon emissions is actually the farming of meat, and it uses massively more carbon and emits more carbon than the production of plants. So there's a whole range of things that we could do more of and better across North Lanarkshire. So the last slide, you'll be glad to know, if we can move on, is that I'm happy to take questions. But if you want more information, you want to read the plan, we've got briefing on our website, we've got useful resources. We also have a growing bank of case studies on climate action in North Lanarkshire, and we also have an e-bulletin that you can subscribe to. So the reason I wanted to present to you today was to bring you up to date, but also to say we're very keen to support the formation of Act Now community action groups, and they would be really good if those had links into the community board. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy for comments or questions. Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you for Maddie. That was quite informative and quite sobering, some information. If you don't mind, if we can maybe keep any comments or questions quite brief, because we're kind of going over a bit of time in Maddie's presentation. So does anybody have anything they would like to ask? Some more information? As I say, very informative and quite sobering. Councillor. You're on mute, Councillor. Sorry, is nobody any more further questions?
Can you hear me now, Wally?
That's better. Can hear you now, yes.
Marty, that was a good presentation. What's the connection of how do you educate the business sector regarding these carbon emissions? Because the council's doing all the best they can to reach the targets of 2030. But I think that the business sector's got a part to play. So how do you connect with the business sector?
Well, actually, the business sector in part is already doing some things. There's a few exemplars actually in North Lanarkshire. We've got a number of SMEs that are already working in what we might call green trading, where they're producing really green goods and selling them. So we've got some real exemplars. We've got a fantastic company that is now carbon neutral based in Strathclyde Business Park. And we need to use those exemplars and actually motivate and mobilise people in North Lanarkshire. So I mentioned the council is organising an event in September. Des Murray is going to be the lead for that event. And they will be invited to start opening up the conversation about what can be done through the business community. And we're also in discussion about how we can combine the support we provide to community and voluntary sector organisations as well as the business community with guidance. We're even talking about a accreditation scheme, so that if you sign up to the reduction journey, you get you get a bronze, and if you make progress, you get silver, and then if you get to net zero, you get acknowledged with some kind of gold award, so that we actually can badge who's achieving what in North Lanarkshire and actually have some kind of league table. So a lot going on. What I'm really also interested in, businesses obviously, particularly SMEs, are part of our local community, but I'm really interested in how we can engage residents, because individuals can make changes, but I'm really interested in some kind of community-led action. So Vanel are really keen to support the formation of Act Now community groups, and it would be good to have a link into the community board. So I'd be interested to know if any of you are interested in that idea. And finally, we also have a big sort of generic community launch on the 29th of September. The invite's gone out today, and we're going to, in that event, we're going to have 9 workshops where people with an interest in this can meet in their locality workshop and start planning what they want to do. So you don't have to decide tonight, but we've got other chances. I'm sorry as well that I overran on my allotted time. I tried to keep it shorter, but it's quite a big thing to cover.
Thanks, Marty.
That's great, Maddie. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure that gives us all something to think long and hard about. Next item on the agenda.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
Ryan Kelly has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Ryan. Sorry, Ryan. My apologies. Never noticed that.
That's fine. So thanks for the amazing presentation there. You know what to think about. It was good to see a lot of this focus on kind of community stuff. Has there been any consideration to how Vanel will support various kind of community energy schemes as they come up?
Well, what we're hoping is that if we can get 9 Act Now groups formed that are community-led, then we will work with them to raise funding to support the action that people want locally. And there is going to be more and more funding in this space. So we're already researching and identifying what funding is available. So we'll share that with groups. Vanel will also work with local organisations to help them apply for funding. Sometimes it might be the funding available could be a pot that Vanel holds on behalf of North Lanarkshire groups and allocates it. We do that already on a number of funding schemes. So yeah, we're really keen to support the growth of these groups, support community action and get funding. On the community renewable, there's actually a national organisation for community energy schemes, and there is special funding for that. And so if there's motivation at local level, it's possible for local groups to apply for that. There's quite a lot of funding in this space. What we need is to bring people together, decide what they want to do. So if, say, in your area, you want to pursue a community renewable energy scheme, let us know and we'll work alongside you, as indeed will our colleagues in the council.
Thanks, Maddie. Anyway, I think that was quite informative. I've just looked at the actual email that's been out regards the climate launch on the 29th September. So it'd be great if everybody could sign up to that and signpost it and get as many people who are made aware of it as possible. Thank you very much, Mad. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Next to follow that, Lingao. Lynn, delivering digital locally update from Lingao Enterprise Development Officer, Enterprise and Communities. I think it's just an update, Lynn. I don't think it's a presentation, is it?
No, and I'll promise I'll be quick. I'll be quick.
Lovely. We've got you on the clock.
All our time. Thanks very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for allowing me to come along tonight, just to provide a quick update on driving digital locally. As Chair said, my name's Lynn Gow and I'm the Communication and Engagement Lead for Digital NL programme at North Lanarkshire Council. You may recall that one of my colleagues delivered a presentation back in March on our Digital NL plans for the future. And through the Digital NL programme, the Council aims to provide online anytime services which meets the needs of our residents. And we really want to truly understand what these needs are. So we've developed a Driving Digital Locally framework to progress these aims. And I just wanted to update the board tonight on where we're at with this engagement. Now, you will recall at the end of the presentation in March that our ask was to offer volunteers the opportunity to join our new digital subgroup. Now, the purpose of this group is to maximise the use of digital services for communities across North Lanarkshire and to drive effective collaboration and engagement within these communities to develop the Driving Digital Locally framework. We received quite a few volunteers, which I'm delighted about. The group's made up of representatives from all community board areas and we meet on a monthly basis. The initial meeting took place on the 12th of August and was chaired by Councillor Duffy in his role as convener of Transformation and Digitisation Committee. I've written a draft terms of reference and that's already approved at the Digital NL board back in June. And I also presented it at the first meeting of the digital subgroup. And we've got some feedback on that and I've made amendments to it and it's resubmitted for approval at next month's meeting. Also at the meeting, we agreed a rolling chair and vice chair for future meetings and further discussion during the breakout sessions focused on supporting early action to achieve better understanding of digital inclusion across our 9 community board areas and across our equalities group, and also looking at ongoing action to support local work linked to the LOIPs. Since the meeting's taken place, I've also carried out a mapping exercise to find out if we've got the right people on this digital subgroup, and we've agreed to cover 2 reps from each of the community board areas. And as the group progresses, I'll keep this group, the board, up to date with what happens. Also in June, we took part in a digital inclusion seminar hosted by the Digital NL Partnership, and it was chaired by our own Chief Executive, Des Murray. It was an excellent seminar. It was aimed at those in the partnership and other organisations to explore how we can all work together to effectively increase digital inclusion across North Lanarkshire, but also to reaffirm the commitment to the Digital NL Partnership. Split the delegates into workshops to discuss key actions that we all need to take to accelerate digital inclusion. The final report's not yet published yet, but early overarching themes that were identified in the groups are increased knowledge of digital skills needs amongst our own communities, increased investment around infrastructure and better collaboration amongst the partner organisations. And I think that the Digital NL Partnership will be taking these forwards, but I think that this kind of seminar is something that can be replicated at a community board level, and it's certainly something that the Digital NL, the digital subgroup are looking at. I've also just this week started some initial engagement with our 77 elected members because they're going to be a key focus for our Driving Digital Locally framework. I put out a survey to them just to get their feedback and thoughts around digital inclusion. And just one final point, I've just been working on a new project with the Council Service Integrator at Idyllisis, and it's targeting older residents in retirement complexes so they can adopt technology to help with their loneliness and improve their overall happiness and well-being. This is going to be funded through Connecting Scotland. I'm delighted to say that we've been successful in gaining 200 devices and MiFi boxes for this project. At the moment, we've got around 100 residents in our retirement complexes that are interested in getting involved in this project, and I'm going to be linking that into the Council's own digital champions to support these elderly people as they get the devices, and also looking at targeting our youth in our schools to try and develop an intergenerational project with the elderly people. And that's my update for tonight, and I'm happy to take any comments. But what I'll also do is, just to save some time, is I'm happy to put my email address in the chat bar, and if anybody wants to comment or have any questions later on, that's also fine. Thanks very much, Chair.
That's great, Lynn. Thank you very much. Looking at the time, does anybody have anything important or relevant, or as I say, is it easier just sending an email to Lynn? Does anybody want to feedback that? Looks like you're getting off scot-free tonight, Lynn. Okay.
Fab. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, moving on. Housing strategy update. I believe there's a presentation from Margaret Kelly, who's the Business Planning Manager, Enterprise and Communities.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and thanks everyone for the opportunity to talk about the draft local housing strategy. I'll just try and share my screen just now. So hopefully everybody will be able to see that okay. If you can't, then if somebody could just shout out to me so that I can know if you can see it okay. Okay. So in terms of tonight's presentation, just a quick overview in terms of the format of it. I'll cover briefly some background in terms of how we got to this stage we're at today with the draft local housing strategy, what we are trying to achieve with the new strategy, which is set out in the key priorities and actions, and our next steps, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some discussion afterwards. So for anyone who isn't familiar with the local housing strategy, the local housing strategy is the overarching strategy for North Lanarkshire for housing. It is an all tenure document that sets out the vision for housing and housing related services, and it covers a 5-year period. So our current strategy spans 2016.
Margaret, sorry to interrupt, but you're quite low. Could you maybe speak up a wee bit? It's quite hard to hear. I don't know if it's just myself or...
I know I had this problem last night. The microphone is on full. Is that any better?
I find difficulty to hear it as well.
Is that still really, really poor quality? If you bear with me, what I'm going to try and do just now is I will try and switch my camera off and see if that makes a difference. Sometimes that actually does work, so if you bear with me just now. Does that sound any better in terms of the sound quality?
No, it's just the same.
That is really, really strange. Apologies everyone for that. I don't know what's wrong with this because the microphone has been working fine all day. It doesn't seem to be working for some reason on WebEx. It seems to be working fine on Teams.
Sometimes if you've got headphones, you can connect them, the sound can maybe be better.
I don't know, Chair, if you want to maybe take another agenda item just now, and I'll just have a wee look at seeing if I can fix the sound quality just now.
Yep, that's fine. We can move on and we can come back to you. We can come back, Margaret, once you think you've got it fixed up. So I'll move on to item 9 of the agenda, if that's okay. It's the flexible funding digital, and I think probably an update from Matt. You okay to go with that, Matt? Yeah?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to give a quick update on the flexible funding, the tackling insecurity funding that's been given out over the last few months through the Scottish Government and the Council for local community groups and other initiatives on behalf of the partnership. That's the report that was issued is to update on the report that was previously given to the boards in the last cycle, and gives further details about additional funding through the flexible funding arrangements across a wide range of receiving groups and initiatives across the North Lanarkshire area. Shows some of the work that was undertaken recently by the communities team, community learning and development regarding the work in their summer activity, but also financial inclusion in terms of work that's been undertaken there. Appendix 1 shows the funding that was given out in relation to applications from local community groups that was awarded earlier this year. And it's just to advise of a second round of funding that's been issued to support digital inclusion. That funding application process is ongoing at the moment, and local groups have been asked to apply for funding up to £1,000 to support through IT and digital devices that may help their group activity in the area. Memory serves me, the 6th of September is the closing date for that, and the applications will be assessed shortly thereafter, and hopefully funding issued later on in the autumn. But it's a good, it's a good, hopefully a welcome further funding in the local area. But that's all on that one, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
No questions, no? Fine. Margaret, have you managed to resolve the situation? If you can hear us, are you moved away?
Does this sound any better, Chair?
Yeah, that sounds a lot better.
Oh,
Everything else here are better.
That's great.
Okay,
it must
Margaret.
be something. That's perfect. Thanks for that. So I'll just try and share the presentation again. Okay, folks, thanks for the opportunity to speak about the local housing strategy. So just a very brief overview in terms of the presentation, just a bit of background in terms of how we got here today, what we're trying to achieve with the new draft strategy, our key priorities and actions, some of our next steps, and then hopefully some time afterwards for some discussion. In terms of how we got here today, our draft local housing strategy, for anyone who isn't familiar with it, is the overarching housing plan for North Lanarkshire. It spans a 5-year period, so our current strategy spans 2016 to 21, and this new strategy will span the next 5-year period going forward to 2026. We carry out a few key tasks to develop the draft strategy. The first one is a review of local and national evidence, and that helps identify what the key housing issues and challenges are in North Lanarkshire, both currently just now, but as I said, over the next 5-year period going forward. A crucial part of this is carrying out a housing need and demand assessment, which we do in partnership with the 7 other local authorities that make up the Glasgow City region. Our current draft local housing strategy is based on Housing Need and Demand Assessment 2, and we are currently underway with Housing Need and Demand Assessment 3, which hopefully should be completed within the next couple of months. This is quite a crucial piece of work because it helps identify our housing supply targets across tenures, so that's by affordable housing but also by market housing as well. And it also helps us understand a wee bit better in terms of a housing system and housing flows, so it helps inform housing policy. In terms of developing the draft strategy, consultation and engagement is a crucial part of that, and we have been consulting for the past year and a half in terms of the draft strategy that we have to date. So prior to COVID-19 restrictions, that involved some face-to-face events and involvement opportunities. And since the onset of the pandemic, that has shifted predominantly mainly to online focus groups, workshops, online surveys, a lot of social media awareness to prompt people for involvement in the range of activities we've been undertaking, and also some telephone and postal surveys as well, just conscious of trying to involve as wide an audience as possible in terms of developing the new strategy. So the draft strategy was produced and published in June this year, and it's out for formal consultation, which spans a 12-week period. The formal consultation is due to end at the end of August, but given that we're carrying out these presentations at this round of community boards, we will keep the survey online so that if anyone hasn't had the chance to complete the survey or provide feedback, we will absolutely extend that to take that into account and reflect on it for developing the finalised strategy. So what are we trying to achieve? Our vision set out in the draft strategy is to make North Lanarkshire the place to live through the provision of high quality housing and support in sustainable communities that enables people to thrive and prosper. So to do this, the vision is underpinned by 7 strategic housing outcomes, and they cover the main areas where there are key housing challenges in North Lanarkshire. So that's housing delivery, it is creation of sustainable and attractive communities, recognising that housing makes a huge contribution to this and it's much broader than just bricks and mortar. It's about tackling and effectively eradicating homelessness. It's about accessible and adaptable housing and promoting health and wellbeing and independence. It's about tackling climate change and fuel poverty and improving house condition. And also we've pulled out a separate strategic action specifically this time around the private rented sector. And that's aiming to improve the quality and accessibility of the private rented sector and links very much into the publication of Scotland's first long-term national housing strategy, which sees that as a priority as well. So we don't have time this evening to go into every single action that we propose to do in terms of the new strategy. Instead, what I've done is I've picked out some key actions and grouped them together to give you a flavour for some of the key actions and key things that we want to do over the next 5 years. And obviously you can look at the full strategy, it's on the Council's website if you want any further information on each of the respective sections. So in terms of meeting housing need in the broadest sense, that covers strategic housing outcome 1, but also strategic housing outcome 2. So that's around preventing and tackling homelessness, but also about increasing the delivery of homes across tenure. So that's across social rented and the affordable housing sector, but also the private sector as well, and ensuring that those homes are high quality and contribute to sustainable communities. So what we want to do is we want to deliver a broader range of diverse housing options in North Lanarkshire, recognising that everyone's housing needs can be quite different. So we intend to enable our partner housing associations to deliver more mid-market rent homes and also establish a vehicle so that the council can also deliver mid-market rent homes should market conditions allow. We also want to deliver shared equity housing and in particular look at that around older people. So looking at options where we can enable older people who have more limited equity to realise another housing solution on the open market to access some alternative housing options. A new addition within the draft local housing strategy is around self-build. So we want to create a self-build register, which will be published on the council's website, but we also want to look at land policy and ensure that we can make an offering in terms of assisting people who are interested in that option. As I said, we want to complete housing need and demand assessment. You may be familiar, but we have a very ambitious council new build programme in North Lanarkshire with a target of 5,000 new council homes by 2035. And over the next 5-year period, we have set out in our strategic housing investment plan the delivery of 3,000 new affordable homes. That's both housing association and council over the next 5 years. So it really is quite an ambitious plan. So we want to build on that going forward, and our new housing need and demand assessment will provide us with refreshed evidence for housing supply. In order to deliver on our ambitious targets, we want to expand the empty homes purchase scheme and the open market purchase scheme, which have been really effective since establishing. And that not only helps us increase the supply of council stock, but it also helps us address other problems such as difficulties where we are completing works in mixed tenure blocks and mixed tenure estates. So it's very helpful for that. And it also helps tackle the problems associated with the blight of empty homes and creating more attractive and sustainable communities. As I said, the private rented sector is a big priority in terms of this new strategy. So we want to develop a new private rented sector access scheme which will help people access accommodation within the private rented sector and make the private rented sector a more attractive and viable housing option for people. You may be familiar, but local authorities and partners were tasked with developing rapid rehousing transition plans to effectively tackle homelessness within their local authority areas. This is a partnership response, and we have a range of actions set out within our own RRTP in North Lanarkshire. So we want to implement and progress those actions, and a lot of those actions centre around enabling permanent housing as the first and foremost option for people who are homeless, and where people do have to access temporary accommodation, the time that they spend in temporary accommodation is minimised, and for people who require support, who have more complex needs, then they have access to wraparound support. So a lot of it in terms of the rapid rehousing plan is about implementing our Homes First model. In terms of creating sustainable communities, as said, we recognise housing plays a huge role in terms of this, and it is much, much broader in terms of not just the physical offering of a home. So in terms of creating sustainable communities for Strategic Housing Outcome 2, we want to help support the Town Vision projects, and housing makes a huge contribution through increasing new residential provision. So we want to work on transformative stuff like Motherwell Town Hall, Kildonan Street, and help support that. And in doing so, improve the connectivity of our communities. So that's about looking at the physical, the social, and also the digital connectivity required to make communities work well. This also links in to another action, which is around 20-minute neighbourhoods, which some of you might have heard about. It's not a new concept. It's been around for a number of years with 20-minute neighbourhoods in Melbourne and Paris, but more recently the Scottish Government has reinvigorated this concept and is keen for local authorities to look to implement 20-minute neighbourhoods. In North Lanarkshire, we actually have a lot of 20-minute neighbourhoods, but we need to look at the quality of the neighbourhoods, we need to look at the local amenity provision, and we need to look at what's missing and how we can strengthen that. So that is a key priority for us. We have an economic regeneration delivery plan in North Lanarkshire, and that's about improving economic outcomes for all. And housing not only helps with providing the foundations and platforms for other elements of a successful life, it also helps in terms of creation of jobs and boosting the local economy. So we intend to progress the actions within that. You will have heard about, no doubt through the council website and lots of other avenues about our tower reprovisioning programme, which is a very ambitious programme as well. We're well underway with phase 1 of that programme just now, and we aim to complete phase 1 of the reprovisioning programme by 2025, and that involves the demolition of just over 1,700 properties and identify for phase 2 the properties and blocks that we want to progress for implementation. As I said, we want to continue and expand the empty homes purchase scheme, but not just in respect of bringing back empty homes into council ownership. There is another arm of that, and that's the council's empty homes officer, who does a lot of proactive work with private landlords to bring empty homes back into use within the private sector. So that is another key priority for us, recognising the blight that empty homes creates in terms of our local communities. In terms of specialist provision, we recognise in North Lanarkshire that there is a shortfall of wheelchair accessible homes, and all the research and evidence tells us that this shortfall is going to increase within the next lifespan of the new local housing strategy, but beyond that. So we really need to increase the provision of accessible homes across all tenures. So That means increasing wheelchair standard and wheelchair livable, indeed, homes within council provision and housing association provision, but also in the private sector. And that's a new thing because up until now, we've only recently, over the past year or so, had guidance from Scottish Government around creating all 10-year wheelchair accessible home targets. So there is a fair bit of work to be done with private developers around increasing awareness of needs in terms of wheelchair provision, and also encouraging developers to deliver that on site. We also want to increase the provision of accessible and adaptable homes, and we want to ensure that any new homes that we build are adaptable over the life course, so meet a range of changing needs and help support people to live in their own home for as long as possible. Linked to that is the provision of equipment and adaptation, and also technology. I've mentioned a bit about shared equity for older people. That is important for us going forward, helping to meet housing needs for older people. But we also want to look at things like implementing a downsizing scheme as well. There's been some publicity on that recently, and that's about helping match older people to the right housing option for them. As I said, technology is developing all the time, and it provides lots of innovative solutions to help people stay independent at home and improve their health and well-being. So we intend to complete a smart homes pilot in one of our retirement complexes and learn from that so that we can replicate, hopefully, some positive outcomes in other complexes. We also want to develop an interactive smart home standard for council new build homes, and that will help pave the way in terms of our new build programme, and also links to the Scottish Government's longer term housing strategy, which aims to improve digital connectivity across the board. We want to reduce hospital related discharge where it is housing related, and we have a range of different options to do that, recognising that staying in hospital when you're clinically ready to be discharged has a really significant detrimental effect. So we intend to look at the provision of our temporary accommodation and our resource flats to expand our offering. And lastly, in terms of specialist provision, is we know that we have a gap in terms of our understanding of particular groups in terms of housing needs. So we want to improve that understanding, and that's about looking a bit more in terms of the housing needs of ethnic minority groups, but also women and children who experience domestic abuse and care experienced young people and disabled people. So,
Margaret, sorry, can I interject on this? We're just going over a bit in time, if we could maybe move on in this.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'll sum this up just very quickly. Then, last line,
if you don't mind.
No problem. Improving housing condition energy efficiency. I'll not dwell on this. A lot of it actually, Maddie's actually covered some of it. So it's about the housing contribution in terms of achieving net zero for the council's ambition for 2030, and it's about developing a range of options to assist owners in terms of repairs and maintenance, and improving quality and management in the private rented sector. Next steps, we're completing consultation on the draft strategy just now. All the feedback will be used to inform the final strategy. Hope to take that to the committee in November cycle 2, but it's dependent on Scottish Government feedback on the draft strategy, and hopefully adoption late 2021. Some links for you, but you'll get the presentation sent after the meeting. And thanks for listening, and apologies for going over the time and the sound quality. So I'll just stop sharing this.
That's great, Margaret. Thanks very much for that. You done well to come back for the microphone situation. But I think if we could maybe get the presentation circulated to people, if we get any questions or queries, we could get back to you. Okay, we'll be happy with that, folks. Okay. We're moving on to item 10, community partnership updates. There's the first two items on that is the board development sessions, and Matt Costello, if we want to then move on to the local development programme, Matt, we want to kind of cover the two areas, and any questions or queries we can fire them back at you. Thank you.
That's fine, thanks, Chair. Just to touch on briefly the community board development programmes, you'll recall the last round of board meetings we introduced the process starting relating to the board development programmes and developing the training needs analysis that was required to take that forward. Well, we've had the training needs analysis questionnaire sent out. To date, we've had about 26% returns on that. We might still get some more in over the next couple of weeks. We did extend the deadline on that to come in. Early indications are showing us that there are a few things that people are looking for further development opportunities, further training opportunities, and that will be developed into the timetable going forward. But a lot of people have asked for further feedback relating to community asset transfer, the local development programme, participatory budgeting, the local outcome improvement plans, the budget processes across the partnership and the council as well, and partnership working in general. Other areas more specific to operations of the board are about managing conflict, managing priorities, and ensuring that we reach seldom heard groups. So these are some of the key things that we've been picking up on so far, and that will all be built into a training programme that you'll be invited to participate in over the next few months, and further details will be made available on that in a future report to the community boards and relevant partnership groups and council committees. So as the timetables develop, we'll let you know more about that going forward. Moving on to the local development programme, the report that was issued with the papers, that shows how we've been going on in terms of prioritising the projects that have been put forward within the Coatbridge area, and can advise that a number of the consultations, particularly relating to any potential play areas and parking areas, will be commencing over the next couple of weeks. So if you've got aware of any projects in those areas, then the work will be starting in terms of consulting on that fairly soon. We'll then move forward to taking forward the proposals to a tendering process that will be put in place and allow us to hopefully deliver a number of projects before the end of the financial year. So we'll be doing that as it's ongoing. We have also issued previously the project proposal forum for any projects that local groups, elected members are interested in putting forward further projects to the LDP. Then that can be completed and handed in to ourselves, and we can look to see how we can take that forward through the process. If anybody's got any interest in that, please let the communities team know, and we'll help support you through that process as well. That's all I've got to say in those reports, Chair. We'll have to take any questions.
Councillor McVeigh.
Thanks, Chair. Matt, good to see you. A few weeks ago, I was out, I think it was Derwent Drive, Townhead, regarding a proposal for parking. Did you comment on that one? Have you got an update on that for me?
Is it a brand new project, Councillor, or is it one that's been ongoing for a while?
It's going to the tender process, I think, Matt.
Right. Is that the one you met on site with one of the communities team? Would that be right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. That's one of the ones with the consultation. We're pulling together all what we're doing. They're doing a kind of concept design that will be sent out to the local area for that's affected by the proposal. Once we get feedback from that then goes into the pot for further discussion with the design team, and we'll move that forward then to go out to tender for any organisations that wish to tender to deliver the projects. That's the process for that going forward. And any updates on that regarding specific projects, that will be contained within the community board report on subsequent cycles.
Thanks,
Matt. Councillor Docherty, waving away there. Carry on, Councillor.
Mark, only two issues at Kirwood, one in the Swinton Crescent car parking situation, and the one down in the bottom of Mitchell Street where you and housing and roads. I think it was a 3 partnership programme down there at the large lay-by down at the bottom of Mitchell Street. You were looking at that as well. Can you give us a progress report on these 2 projects?
Sorry, Councillor, I missed the first one there. Kind of Wi-Fi dropped a wee bit. The second one, in terms of Mitchell Street, that's certainly one that's been led by housing at the moment. We have advised them we would support the work they're doing in there, but we'll make further inquiries and come back to you on that one.
Yeah, the other one, the first one was Swinton Crescent.
Swinton Crescent, that's one of the ones that's going out to consultation just now. We've done a concept design for that, and there'll be a design going out to consultation on that one.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Matt, was there anything else on Viewfield Road?
I don't think he heard you.
Sorry, was there another question there? Sorry.
Yeah, there's another question, Matt.
On Viewfield Road, Matt, was there any other consideration there?
No, I'm not aware of any further projects. I think I've had discussions with you on that one in relation to the proposal there.
Yeah, I just see there was more in Mitchell Street than Viewfield. This as well. Next to parking on the bend at Mitchell.
Right, I'll take that. We can deal with that one off table. Get some more detail off you and discuss that off table.
Okay, thanks for that. Anybody else, any other questions of Matt? Nope. Fine, great. Okay, moving on. We're at I think there's some reports on the local outcome improvement plans. You've probably got an update from Christine Boyle, Elaine Johnson and Douglas Milne based on the 3 improvement plans, which are digital inclusion, poverty and mental health and wellbeing. I'll take them in order. Christine, do you want to go first then?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We'll be very brief, just to give you a wee bit of an update on where we're at, because you remember that the plans were endorsed by the board at the last cycle. Just to let you know that the actual report, the LOIP report, is in the final stages of production, and it should be ready in the next couple of weeks. So that will be getting out to people as soon as it's ready. Moving forward, what we hope to do is provide an update in advance of the board meetings, so that you're getting an update on the LOIPs and the progress, and that will come out with the papers for the meeting in advance of the next meeting. But just for now, to give you a kind of brief update, I'm doing the update for Annette Warren, who is our member of staff who is linked to the Coatbridge area, but is actually off today, so I'm giving her update for her. Just to let you know that the subgroup for poverty will be meeting early September. Key organisations have been identified and contacted regarding getting involved in the subgroup. Desktop research has been carried out throughout August to identify who's doing what and where. And the training needs assessment, one of the ones that Matt had mentioned as well, should give us some information and identify kind of local needs. So that's where we're at just now. The subgroups will be starting to meet shortly, and we'll be able to give you feedback on that. And now, if it's okay, Chair, I'll pass you on to Douglas.
Yep.
Thanks, Christine. As previously mentioned, members of our group participated in the Driving Digital Locally group between the wider boards and made a very positive experience that night. Unfortunately, our subgroup has been unable to meet. We tried to arrange a date for last week, but due to prior commitments, our members couldn't get along. But I did circulate an update of some activities and current funding opportunities around digital to the members of the group that they might find useful. I'll put some of these details in the chat in the meeting tonight, along with my contact details, and should your organisation require support with digital or more general IT issues, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I'll pass over to Elaine now.
Okay, thank you. Elaine Johnson, I'm leading the subgroup for mental health, and we met today earlier on. We had our initial meeting, so a few people are here today that were on that meeting, so thank you. We had a look over the action plan, so with the key people round the table, and we're beginning to take forward the first priority, which is identifying and mapping out current provision. So what's out there already and who's doing what, and we're looking at developing an up-to-date list of mental health and emotional wellbeing supports that we can get out there in the community. But our work is around just the overall aim of increasing mental health and emotional wellbeing supports in the community. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks for your report. Does anybody have any comments want to ask of Christine, Douglas or Elaine in relation to the updates? I'm personally involved in 2 of these subgroups myself, so I know there's quite a piece of work been done and been involved in them, and it's going to be ongoing for quite a while. Well, everybody happy with that then? Yeah, moving on.
Go on, yeah.
Yep. Item 12 is, item 11, petitions. I don't think there's any petitions presented for the meeting, so we'll move on from that. Item 12 is input from local community groups. Does anybody any input from local community groups you want to add to the meeting tonight?
Chair, could I go ahead and just say that we've got the funding available through the consortium? So community groups, if you've got any projects that you wish to help with some CCON funding, then please do get in touch with us.
And obviously that's Christine from the Glenboy Development Trust, who are the the lead organisation in the Coatbridge Consortium, Health and Social Care.
Yes. Sorry, did I not say that? I was just spouted out. Sorry.
You're just too keen to give money away, Christine.
I wish I could. Wish I could.
Okay, so any other input, local community groups?
Can I just say something for the access panel? We find it very hard to access some of the surveys that's getting put out and be able to fill in and stuff. We're finding it quite difficult, and I know other people that are finding it difficult to access the surveys that you're getting asked to kind of fill in and stuff. Just to make them fully accessible would be better, because some people are finding it difficult to access them. And also, I don't know where this should be in the meeting. I'm just making you aware that some people with access issues are having trouble getting to local provisions like the post offices due to their roads and due to traffic. So, and due to down pavements not being provided by. So I don't know where I go with that, but it's just to make the if you're asking everybody in the community to be involved with your surveys and stuff, it's just to try and make it accessible, because we're finding it quite difficult, or some people are anyway.
Christine, could you maybe come back in that, maybe clarify what we're talking about, obviously surveys and some of the road pavement issues? You're on mute, Christine.
Sorry, I thought Matt had put his hand up there to answer.
Yeah, I was going to come in, Chair, if that's all right.
Yeah,
no, it's okay. No, certainly in terms of the surveys that have been sent out, if there's issues with that, but we're really concerned to hear about that there's access issues, and we'll certainly take that back, and it's particularly in relation to the training needs assessment, etc. If there's issues with that, we'll be happy. It might be a good idea if maybe somebody from the team who's designing this linked to me yourself to ensure that was done in the most effective way possible. I'm not 100% clear about the issues regarding access to the post office and things like that. Probably not something I could be able to answer at the moment, but if there's any particular issues, I can certainly pick it up and take it back to the appropriate service within the council.
The issues with the surveys is along with people that are got sight issues, so they're finding it difficult to access it due to their sight issues, so it's not accessible for everybody with different sight issues. The accessing is, well, it's a personal issue, but it's also something that's happening not just in my local area. I'm in Milbury Court, so I've got a local post office that I cannot access safely without going on the road in my electric wheelchair, due to not being down pavements in the right spots so that I can stay on the pavement to get to the post office. And I brought it up with the access panel, but they don't exactly know who the right person is to contact. I tried contacting Des Murray, I've tried contacting certain people, but I don't know who the exact right person is. I remember getting stopped by a police wondering what I was trying to do, which was trying to get to my local post office. So I'm bringing it up with the access panel, but it's just to make you aware there's a big issue, because if I can't make it, there's a lot of people also won't be able to make it to the post office. And then when I brought it up to the access panel, they said that there's other access issues with down pavements getting to what you would call an important community building, because you need to get to your post office type of thing.
Okay. Matt, is that something you could maybe have a further discussion with? Sorry, I've only got you down as ST Allen here. I don't have your first name.
It's Sarah Jane Allen.
Sorry, Sarah Jane. Maybe something, I don't know if that's a local development programme thing, Matt, would it be in regards?
This is what I'm asking. I don't know who I'm going to.
Chair, we'll certainly pick up. We'll have further discussions with Sarah Jane and get more detail, and we'll find out who can help support that.
Okay, thanks for that. Very much for that. Okay, moving on to item 13 is input from community planning partners. Do we have any input? I know there was a late information.
David Boyle's here from Fire and Rescue.
So David, you maybe want to come in?
The police are also here.
Hi, Chair. Yeah, apologies everybody for being late. I was at a fire call earlier on over in Govan, but I'd submitted a paper, so hopefully you have all seen that paper. I'm not going to go through it. There's a lot of statistics involved in it, but just to let you know, within the Coatbridge locality, we're going the right direction. All our statistics are going down the right way, so we're improving. We've not had any sort of fatalities or casualties arise in them in the last quarter there. But obviously we had the fire at Greedies, which was a shame to the local community. Fortunately, there was nobody hurt, and there was no injuries from the fire service side of it. So no casualties, nobody was hurt. I'll just give you a wee quick update of what's happening within the area, within the fire service. We've just merged with South Lanarkshire. So there've been a merge between the North Lanarkshire and South Lanarkshire LSOs. That's our local senior officer or area commander. So we've now got one area commander for the Lanarkshire area, and that ties in with Police Scotland, our health board, the local resilience partnerships as well. So that was the reason for that. On my paper, you'll notice there's a consultation out for UFAS, that's unwanted fire alarms. Unwanted fire alarms, and that's when we're going to like hospitals, schools, maybe somebody's burnt toast, maybe set off an alarm if it's the kids, that kind of thing. So there's a consultation out to see how we can deal with that. Will we stop sending appliances? Will we maybe have a responsible person within these premises that could decide if it's a fire or not, instead of sending out maybe sometimes 3, 4 fire engines, which are taking them away from potential life-saving activities. Within the fire station itself, we've got a youth volunteer scheme that we're going to be setting up. We've advertised for 3 instructors. We're also going to get the fire reach up and running again as well in the near future, and I'll keep you posted with that. But we'll be looking for, in the local community, some of our young people to come along to some drill nights that we'll be having and showing them what we do within the fire service, and they can become part of that as well. And hopefully that'll be a route to a career within the fire service. With the amalgamation with the North and South Lanarkshire, we've got our fire safety office at Coatbridge Fire Station has been moved to Clydesmill. So I'm going to utilise that space, and what I'm looking to do within this fire station is have a community room. So what I'm going to have there is, obviously we need more room for our youth volunteers, but also we've got training equipment. We've got packages there that we could use for CPR through the British Heart Foundation. I'm hoping to make that like a community room where people can come down, groups can come down and use it, and it will be insular from the rest of the station, which means that you can come down. If we're turned out to a fire, you can still use it, you can still get access to it. I'm going to have to make a business case for that, because I'd need to do a wee bit of building work within that room to make it insular from the rest of the station. But that's my plans, and that'd be good if we could involve the local community back down into the station. And lastly, we're just going to cover, which I'm probably, you'll be aware of, it's been in the news, in February next year, it's going to be legislation for everybody to have linked smoke detectors within their house. Just going to give you a wee bit of background on that. That was legislation that was meant to begin this year. It's put back a year because of COVID. Now, just tell you anybody's fears, if you are a tenant, so you have a landlord, you're renting, by law, your landlord should have a linked alarm anyway. There should be a mains detected alarm. So you won't come under this legislation, you will be covered. If you're a homeowner and you require these alarms, but they reckon it's roughly about £200. If you come into a bracket of a high risk, vulnerable person, the fire service will supply and fit these smoke alarms for you. Okay, so but there'll be certain criteria. I have been asked if there's any grants. I know there's somebody on for the Coatbridge Residents Association. Apologies, I've not had a chance to get back to you with the email. I was doing a bit of research before this meeting tonight. But just on the basis of your question, I'm asking if there's any grants. I think there is money coming from the Scottish Government. And what I'll do is I'll circulate, I've got a Word document where I've got some links to our own fire service page about frequently asked questions regarding these smoke detectors, and also onto the Scottish Government's web page as well, because it is their legislation, it's them that's put it through, and obviously we'll have to deal with it as well. But the main thing for me is, if there are people that have got linked alarms in their house, mains alarms, my concern is that in the future there might be scammers coming around households, chapping on the doors, hitting the vulnerable people, saying, this is legislation now, you need to get this done, and they could be charging them for it. So please get that out to the communities. We'll do our best to advertise that as well and get that message out there. Legislation wise, I think the only The only concern I would say is your house insurance. If you've not got these smoke detectors, but how would your insurance company look at it if you're a homeowner, and also if you're maybe trying to sell your house, would it become under a home report? And apologies, I know it was meant to come in this year, but it's very early stages, and we're basically in the process of getting these detectors to supply them to the vulnerable people that we need to, and we will get more information as we go. I'm happy to take any questions, and hopefully that was quite short and concise.
Thanks, David. Any questions for David? Councillor Docherty.
David, this amalgamation that you're going through now with the North and South Lanarkshire,
Yes.
has it affected the amount of appliances you have?
No, not at all. Service delivery has not been changed at all. So the station's personnel, same amount of fire engines, same amount of people within the fire stations. So that has not changed. The only change has been was that an area commander retired from South Lanarkshire, and his post was taken into the service into another directorate. And basically the only difference is that the area commander is in charge of the one big area now. That's all. That's the only change.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Marion?
Yeah, David, I'm wondering whether or not you could give us some definition, send it out to us about vulnerability, because obviously from a CAB point of view, we will get inquiries about it.
Yeah, certainly, Mariam. See the Word document I'll get distributed out to you all. That should have links in it. And from the fire service point of view, that will show you the criteria where you'll get the smoke detectors put in. But remember, if there's vulnerable people out there that can't maybe get out of their houses if there's a fire, just because they might be tenants, we still need to go out and check, make sure they're all right as well. So please don't think this is only for the new smoke detectors. If there's people out there that you think are vulnerable, please get in touch with us. On my report, there's contact details to do that.
Chair, there's a question on the chat bar.
Oh, sorry, I'll bring up the chat. I apologise. Information of fire be circulated.
It's myself, Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods.
Yes, Councillor. What we'll do as soon as I get the information when that is going to be kicking off, because there is some adaptations getting done to the existing building as well, and that's just to make it more user friendly for wheelchair users. We have got a ramp that has to get put in, but because of the steepness of the ramp, it has to be a double, so it's got to go up and loop and back round again, because if it goes up in the one run, it's too steep. So we're just waiting to get that done. We've interviewed for our volunteers, and then obviously we need to get people that want to come and join it as well. But any information, I will be sending it back, and as soon as I get it, I'll send it on to you as well, or I'll bring it to the board meetings.
Hi, David.
Hi.
I know you've done a community safety day in Shawhead with mayors and the police. Have you done it in other areas, or was it just Shawhead?
Was this the traffic?
It was a community safety day. It was about smoke alarms and window alarms.
Yeah, what we'll be looking to do is, sorry, I should have mentioned that at the start. We are coming out of COVID now, so we are starting to get back out into the communities, and we will be looking to get to more events if there's events running, and trying to get back into the schools as well. Obviously, we need to be COVID secure and make sure everything's in place. But yeah, we'll be looking to do that. But what I'll be looking to do as well is, in each of the wards within the Airdrie and Coatbridge, over the two community boards, I've got a watch commander. That's somebody that's in charge of a shift at the station, and I want them to get more involved in community engagement. So we'll be looking to do that, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, David.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I think we've got an input from Alan Henry from Police Scotland.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, fine, Alan.
Okay, just a quick introduction then. Alan Henry, I'm actually the Sergeant for Airdrie Community Policing Team, and I'm covering tonight for the new Sergeant who started a couple of months back at Coatbridge, and that's Michael McCusker, for your information. Inspector McGuckin, who I think attended the last couple of these Community Board meetings, is retiring just shortly. She'll be retiring in October. So the new inspector, who will be covering Coatbridge and Airdrie areas, will be Inspector Neil McLeod. he presently works out of Cumbernauld, and he's covering just now whilst Inspector McGuckin is off. So you've got a guest appearance tonight filling in for those who can't make it today. I've been given some information just to pass to you from the Coatbridge Community Policing team. So I think domestic housebreakings were covered in the last meeting. So since then, from that period onward, we have had a further 9 domestic housebreakings, 3 of which are detected, 4 of which inquiries remain ongoing, and that ranges from CCTV work to forensic work, etc. Following a couple of incidents in the Blair Hill area, which are our most kind of recent incidents, the community policing team at Coatbridge are arranging for a leaflet drop and some home security advice to be passed via our Safer Communities officer. Moving on then to willful fire raisings, which I think were also mentioned at the last meeting. There's been a further 4, which were classed as willful fire raisings criminal. So there's 1 detection from those 4 incidents, 3 remain undetected. Thankfully, willful fire raising obviously covers a wide scope, and none of those were to houses. It's actually been kind of small rubbish fires, wheelie bins, things of that nature. So thankfully, nothing that anyone was hurt at. We have 3 that remain undetected at the moment. Few issues that are kind of current that Michael asked me to bring up. Shoplifting in Coatbridge Town Centre, I think it's become kind of a fairly prevalent issue. We've got some work done by our analysts, and shoplifting's increased 18% this year versus last year. We're sitting at a detection rate just now 73%. And just from that analysis, they've been able to identify who the most frequent offenders are and put plans in place to try and manage those offenders. So this week, for instance, there's a couple of days of action going on where, although there are 2 dedicated town centre officers, the rest of the community policing team and others are getting involved in directed patrols in the town centre, working with the retailers whom the town centre officers have excellent relationships with. Just recently, just as a guidance as to how that works kind of bearing fruit, they've managed to detect a male who was responsible for 6 separate shopliftings, and I know that work's continuing. In relation to youth disorder, the West End Park has kind of been a repeat location in terms of youths congregating and causing disorder. Community policing team have deployed plainclothes and uniform patrols down there to try and bring that issue under control, and they've enlisted the help of the British Transport Police in relation to youths who appear to be coming from the Baillieston area through on the train to engage with those youths and kind of nip that in the bud before they arrive at the destination at the West End Park. I know there's further work going on this week with the community policing team again in that area, and that's an area they've been focusing on over the past number of weeks. Again, in relation to youth disorder, Langloan area, I think is commonly known as the bumps locally. That's been a long-standing issue, which I'm told has more or less been eradicated in terms of the call volume that we're getting in. That's been through high-vis patrols and parental alert letters when we...
I'm trying to stay on till this meeting ends because I've never been to one before. They're 2 hours long. I've got 9 of them, but I won't.
Apologies, but I think that's Maddie over.
Could you put me in?
No, you're okay. I don't think she knows. I'll give her a minute or I'll carry on.
Right, carry on. I've just got, Alan, I'm obviously conscious of the time as well because I've got Elaine Johnson for the NHS Health Improvement Team wanting to do a wee input, so if we can maybe move it on a bit, I'd be grateful.
Sure. We sent out parental alert letters to let the parents of the kids know where they are. Not always open. Joint visits have started back up with the council on a weekly basis. That's across Airdrie, Cumbernauld and Coatbridge. So we're now back out visiting houses that are getting identified for antisocial behaviour and assisting the council in that. I'll wrap it up there because I'm conscious of the time. If anyone's got any questions, they can fire away, or I can supply an email address.
Chair,
Councillor
Councillor
McVeigh. Councillor McVeigh. You're on mute, Councillor.
Do you hear me now, Chair?
Yeah, carry on.
Sergeant Henry, that's good to hear you. A few weeks ago, I spoke to Sergeant Erica Bailey, and I was asking for more police in the West End Park. You gave me an update there, that's very good. The whole situation started because the bins were getting sent late, and they were meeting gangs for other areas. Have you left any of these young team at the West End Park?
I couldn't give you numbers, Councillor. I only have what I've kind of been supplied here as I'm just covering tonight, but I can certainly ask for an update from Sergeant McCusker and come back to you if that would be okay.
That's fine, thanks.
No problem.
That's great, Alan. Thank you very much. Elaine, sorry for keeping you waiting. You want to give him your input, please?
Yeah, sure. Elaine Johnson, Health Improvement Team. Just following on from that, the next block is street soccer. It's Street Soccer North Lanarkshire, and it's a diversionary activity. It's pop-up football pitches, and through the kind of local intelligence in our area, we've identified West End Park as the next block, so I can circulate the promotional material when it comes out. Okay, and also around mental health, just following on to the LOIP update that I gave. I wanted to draw your attention to the social prescribing app and ask if you could all download that and also promote that within your kind of contacts. I don't know if you can see the app. No, you won't see it. What I'll do is afterwards I can circulate the information. So it's the Well Connected programme, and it's shown to help people to increase self-esteem and self-confidence, reduce low mood and feelings of stress, and help people to deal with the problems that are causing this. So that's around like money worries, loneliness, unemployment, and also about developing ways of coping with the challenges of life. So linking into the arts, leisure, education, volunteering. So I would encourage you all to download the app, and after the meeting I can send on information around that. But that's part of the wider social prescribing programme that we will be linking into the work that we're doing in the subgroups. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, moving on with item 14 agenda. Is there any other competent business?
Hi William, it was just to introduce myself. I'm Linda Smith, house manager from Buchanan Street, and this is the first meeting that I've attended tonight, so I found it very informative to hear what my colleagues is saying. So thank you for the invite, and I look forward to attending further meetings, and hopefully I can share some inputs in future meetings.
That's great. You're welcome. Good for you. Enjoy your attendance. Thank you. Is any other business moving on nicely?
Willie.
Yes, Councillor Woods.
Right. Can I just come in a wee minute?
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is, I think, about my third meeting, and I have mentioned that I have brought it up in Matt's attention, but I just feel that we've not got, I know it's a community board, I feel that we've not got enough of the community coming to this meeting. I know we've had Coatbridge Tenant Association, and I see Anne Curley from Shawhead, but I think we need to start involving more of our community in Coatbridge. I mean, it's great seeing everything, all the officers coming the night with the presentations, but we need to involve the community more. I don't know whether if we can get officers to even attend maybe a tenants association and try and get them involved a wee bit, not to one of their meetings or something like that.
Can I come back in on that, Chair? Is that okay?
Yeah, carry on, Matt.
No, absolutely, Councillor Woods, I totally understand your point on that. We do contact a lot of tenants and residents associations, community councils, community forum, all organisations that are on our mailing list. We do encourage them to attend. We make them aware of the meetings. We ask for agenda items. We do all that on a regular basis through the communities team and to other partners in Voluntary Action, North Lanarkshire, etc., and other partners through health improvement as well. Other groups are very much involved with local groups. So we do make real efforts to try and do that. And we will continue to do that. I'll give you that assurance. We will make specific links with, again, tenants and residents associations, etc. If you've got any other contacts that you wanted to share with us, we're more than happy to take them on board and try and make introductions, etc. to them. But as some, we're very keen to get as many people along as we can, and we'll keep working on that.
Right, okay, I will do. If I've got any more groups, I'll let you know, Matt.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Geraldine. I think we've covered all of the agenda tonight then, folks, and let's just highlight the date and time of the next meeting is Monday the 22nd November. Again, at 6:30 on Webinex. I'd like to thank you for attendance. Thank you for your ongoing support, and enjoy the rest of your evening, folks. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Good night.
Good night.
Chair, good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Chair.